everyone, I'm Miss B. Hanley, and today I am talking about the theatrical performances I watched in 2023. So this year I started a new teaching job. I'm teaching theater classes in 2023, 2024. So a lot of what I did this year, besides reading, was go see theatrical performances around my town. I saw mostly local theater performances. I did not travel out of the state that I live in to see any theatrical performances this year. That's something I hope to do in the future in 2024. But this year I stuck to my town. I did see a lot of professional performances, community theater performances, obviously some school performances that my students were in. And then I did have tickets to a couple of shows that I actually ended up missing because of life circumstances. I saw, let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I saw 6 professionally developed theater productions in my town, and the rest were other live performances, readings that I saw either done by a school, my local movie theater, and some done by our local library. So I'm just gonna kind of go through the ones that I thought were really big and important, and talk a little bit about my experience and my thoughts on them. The one thing that I am a little upset about that I didn't do this year, that I definitely want to change for next year, is I want to keep all of the programs from all of the performances that I saw. I kept them, I just don't have them in like one specific place. So that's something I want to do, is I want to make sure like I keep a program. If anything, I'm going to try and get like multiple copies of the programs, so that way I can have some to give to my students and some to keep for myself. So yeah, that's something, my goal for 2024 is to keep the programs. So the first theatrical performance that I saw in 2023 was Silent Sky, and this was at a local theater called the Asolo Repertory Theater. And they have a partnership with Florida State University where they, I don't know if they necessarily hire these actors from the college or if it's like a conservatoryship of students from Florida State that come down to our city to work in the Asolo Repertory Theater. It was a play, it was not a musical, it was a straight play, and it was about the women in science who were basically charting the sky through like an observatory telescope. It's a little hard to explain. Maybe I'll get a description up. Basically tells the story of a woman who's hard of hearing, who joined a observatory as a woman who basically, like, she would get the plates from the telescope, pictures that they would take of the sky, and then she would plot out the stars as they could tell them in like this sort of map, in this sort of like astronomical map. And it was absolutely fascinating. I think I'd heard this story before, but something kind of similar to Hidden Figures, but instead of it being about Black women, it was just about women in general in the scientific field, and how unseriously they were taken in their job, even though they were doing the bulk of the work in this observatory. Especially at the Asolo Theater, they had a rotating stage, which I thought was so cool. And the set would change based on where the story was taking place, and it would rotate. It would literally like rotate on the stage, which I thought was really fascinating. I love the way they did it. It was a pretty small stage and a pretty small set for what they did with it, but it was very, very impressive. And it was beautiful. The art of the set was very beautiful. They had kind of like these stars. There's star maps on the ground, which were really cool. The actors were amazing. All of the people who were in the production were just, they blew me away with their abilities. I got to see the performance because my school had received a grant to take our 8th graders to go see the show. And in order to approve the show, teachers had to go basically preview it before the students could actually see it, because there is a same-sex kiss in the play, which, to be completely honest, was missable. There was a even bigger heterosexual kiss that happened in the performance that was way more obvious than the same-sex kiss that happened in the show. The same-sex kiss that happened was basically almost like a background action. I don't even know if any of our students noticed it, to be quite honest with you. I feel lucky to be able to go see the performance, especially for free as a teacher, and I'm grateful for the Asolo for giving us that opportunity. However, I just feel kind of bad that they had to comp our tickets in order for us to see the show because of the same-sex relationship that was literally not even that prominent in the play. The story was very good. The acting was amazing. The set was really beautiful. And overall, I really enjoyed it. The next show that I saw, I did see with family members. I did not see as a part of a school function. I saw it separately, and it was because my hairdresser was in the show, and he was cast as the main character in Company. And this was at the Manatee Players in a town nearby. And I went with my aunt and a couple of her friends, and I had never seen or read Company before. I know that I've heard music from it before. I know that I have maybe even seen scenes from it before, but I don't think I'd ever seen an entire production of Company at all. So this was somewhat of a new play for me. And Company is a musical. And basically it is about the main character who is at a point in his life where all of his friends are kind of going into long-term relationships or already married or having kids, and he's still a single bachelor, and he's trying to figure out what to do with his life. I mean, it is based in like a city, urban atmosphere. I thought that the whole group of actors were really great. I think that's what makes the show kind of so interesting, is because it's centered around this one main character, but the other characters in the show kind of have their own moment, their own time in the spotlight to share their story and where they're coming from, especially their experiences and their relationships. And they all have these really different views on marriage and relationships. It is an adult show. It is not something you want to go show middle school students. I definitely wouldn't take middle school students to see it, but it was very good. And for getting to know and knowing some of the actors in the show was also really cool too, to be able to see them perform. Next, I went back to the Asolo Repertory Theater, this time with students, to see The Three Musketeers. So we had gotten 2 grants to see 2 shows at the Asolo Repertory Theater in early 2023. One was Silent Sky for our 8th graders, and one was The Three Musketeers for our 7th graders. And The Three Musketeers was definitely a great fit for the 7th graders. I can't really speak on how well the 8th graders responded to Silent Sky, but the 7th graders really responded well to The Three Musketeers. It's action-packed. It's a fun story. There's romance, there's fighting, there's comedy, there's something for the kids to really get into and relate to. It is always, I think, very difficult to take younger middle school students to a play, especially if they don't know how to act in a theater experience, especially a live theater experience. If they've never been to a live theater performance before, it can be hard to help them understand the expectations of what they're supposed to be doing in a live theater experience and what's happening on stage. But I think The Three Musketeers was a really excellent production to take them to. The set was way more involved than what I remember seeing in Silent Sky. There was a lot more moving pieces. There was a lot more built up in the Three Musketeers set than there was in Silent Sky. Same exact stage, completely different set, with a lot more moving pieces in the Three Musketeers. there was a larger cast as well in The Three Musketeers than there was in Silent Sky. Obviously, a lot more action was happening. There was fight scenes. There was, a lot of movement. It's not a musical, but there was so much involved with the choreography of the fight scenes because there are sword fights. There are like these grappling moves that they have to do. And then there are like kind of sneaky moments with costuming that the characters have to involve themselves in. There was a lot, I think, involved in the production behind the scenes that would have been, I think, interesting to show the students. They only got to see, obviously, the live performance. We did get to do a Q&A with the actors after the production or after the performance, but it would have been kind of cool to see more of the behind the scenes stuff. At least from my perspective as a theater teacher, it would have been kind of cool to see more of the behind the scenes stuff. Our students were really more interested in, obviously, like, how do you kiss somebody, in a live theater production without being in a relationship with them. They were really interested in that. And that was a heterosexual kiss. And that was way more over the top than Silent Sky's romance. Obviously, Three Musketeers has a big romance plot. But I did think that their answer was really appropriate. When the students did ask about that particular kiss that happens on stage, the actors were honest. They said that we have to have an intimacy coordinator, just like you have to have a choreographer for fight scenes so that everybody stays safe. They have to have a choreographer for kissing and intimacy scenes. The production was fantastic. The costumes were amazing. They did definitely set it in the original time period of the Three Musketeers. There was a huge cast. I would think that this kind of production would take a whole bunch of people to put on, just because they had so many different characters with so many different costumes. You had a lot of male characters, obviously, who have to wear traditional time period garb and different roles that they play, like the priest and then like the musketeers themselves and like the king. They all have these very distinctive costumes. And then you also have female characters who are wearing more traditional female attire for the time. But then you also have a female character who's wearing like a male character outfit. And they also have to be able to move and fight and choreograph their movements in these costumes, which I think were just the way that they put it together, the way they made everything work was really amazing. Additionally, you had actors kind of swinging and jumping and moving all around on these sets, on sets that actually needed to move themselves, which again just showed how well put together the set was. There was just so much involved in the Three Musketeers production that I really do wish I had gotten more behind the scenes look at how they did it. Because it seemed really intricate. It seemed really, really, really well put together, but it did seem like it took a lot of moving parts and a lot of people, a lot of crew to make this whole set work. And of course, the next performance that I got involved in, that I actually produced, which was kind of an accident. I fell into it, you could say. My friend Miss Golden and I, we took on volunteering to produce Matilda the musical, the junior version of Matilda the musical, for our students who had already been cast, who had already been given a schedule, who had already been kind of set up to do this musical. The former theater teacher who had done all of the setup for it had left, and so there was no one to direct or produce the musical. So we stepped in to work on it together. Overall, though, I'm really proud with what we were able to accomplish with the students that we were given, that were cast in the show, that with the resources we were given, and with the time period that we were able to do it. We were able to perform it and get it all done. I think the students had a great time. I had a great time doing it. I think I didn't hear anything bad about it. So I think overall, it was a good performance. I like the original Matilda though. I like the non-musical movie version with Danny DeVito and Mara Wilson, personally. but the musical was fun too. The next performance that I saw was not a live performance. It was like a recording of a live performance at a theater, if that makes sense. But I still am counting it because if this production were to tour as a live performance to my town, I would go see it again. And that is Spirited Away, the live action stage performance that I saw at my local movie theater. And holy crap, I am a huge Hayao Miyazaki fan. I love Spirited Away. I love Kiki's Livery Service. I love Princess Mononoke. That is like the main gateway for me in anime is Miyazaki films. Howl's Moving Castle, I'm there for it. So when I found out that there was a live action Spirited Away recording being featured at my local movie theater, my friends and I got tickets and we were gonna go. I almost missed this because I was so sick. I was just getting over COVID, and so I was really like not feeling well. And actually the other live performance that I was gonna go see after this, I ended up missing because my sickness got worse. But I did not miss Spirited Away live action at my local movie theater. It was amazing. If I was able to get a chance to see this actually live in the theater, I totally would. They did perform it in Japanese, so I would not be able to understand it. Actually, I probably would have, because I've watched the movie enough times to know everything that they say, but I still would need like subtitles, which luckily this feature performance did have subtitles, English subtitles for the live action Japanese version. I cannot get over how amazing this live action performance of Spirited Away was. Like, to take an anime, like a movie that is originally animated, and turn it into a live action on a stage is incredible, right? It's not even just turning it from an animated movie to a live action movie, it's turning it from an animated movie to a live action stage performance. Just, I would love to see this live and in person, because even just watching the recording of it, I could tell how incredible this production was. I mean, I talked a little bit about how the set in The Three Musketeers was like this really intricate moving set that they had to climb and swing on. Same thing with the Spirited Away set. Obviously, it was a much bigger stage, probably a lot bigger budget, but the set that they gave in the Spirited Away stage performance, it was massive. It was huge. And to have the actors, you know, like climbing and swinging and all of the fantasy elements that are in the anime to see brought to life through a stage performance were just so ingenious and incredible and inventive. You know, there's so many moments where the characters themselves become literally larger than life. Like, you have a character that turns into a dragon and like belies the way that they were able to tell the story through these really, really intricate and cool like designs, set designs and costume designs was just like, it was just so cool to be able to see that. And I would definitely see it in person if I ever had the chance to. I did buy tickets to another performance that I missed, and it hurts my soul because I spent a lot of money on these tickets. It was the worst month ever. It was May and I had gotten COVID, found out I was pregnant, and I sprained my ankle. And I had tickets, I had 4 tickets to see this musical, and then like 2 of my friends backed out, and then it was just me and Miss Golden, and I was like, I don't think I can go. Like, I am so like messed up right now. Like, I would have to go with a sprained ankle and with COVID, and also like dealing with the fact that I'm gonna be carrying a new life for the next 9 months. I was like, I don't think I could do this. So I gave her the option to take the tickets, and I don't think she did either, which really, really sucks. But it was at the same stage that we did the Matilda performance on. it's something that I want to do in 2024. I definitely want to go see another performance on this stage, just because I'm certain that they have a better way of using the stage than we did. Having not used the stage in the same time and the same capacity that the original theater used it, I would really like to see how they incorporate the difficult elements of that stage into their productions, because they do big musical performances on the stage. The performance that I wanted to go see that I ended up missing was 13, the musical, which I had students who were cast in, which again is another hugely disappointing thing that I'm so sorry I missed out on, to not be able to see my students perform in that musical. So I would like to see how they do their musicals on that stage, and I still have yet to see how they do it. So 2024, that's one of my goals for 2024, is to go see a musical on that stage. End of May, beginning of June, I did see one play at a local community theater called the Urbanite. And the Urbanite is a really small theater in our downtown area, and it is a black box theater. It is like probably 50 people, 50 seats. And I had already seen one play at this theater before, and I had seen it in December of the previous year. And it was set up differently than the one I saw in the summer. So the one that I had originally seen at the Urbanite was just like almost like a strip of stage. It was 2 actors, and they were on a really small stage. There wasn't like any choreography or a lot of staging. It was just 2 actors kind of doing scenes off of each other. Still really good, but it was just actors kind of talking to each other. Then the one that I saw in the summer was set up differently. It was almost set up as theater in the round, but except it was more of a thrust setup where there were audience members on all 3 sides, or on just 3 sides of this performing area. And this play was called That Must Be the Entrance to Heaven. It's a modern play, very avant-garde. The set was only 4 block pieces on the stage, set up like a boxing ring. And the whole premise of the play is these 4 boxers who are fighting in a tournament style boxing match, almost to determine who's going to get to stay in the United States as a citizen. But there is this other element to it that's almost like they're fighting for their chance to go to heaven, which it's hard to explain, but it was incredibly powerful. Like, I cried. Very masculine play. It was 4 actors, all of them were men, and it was boxing. It was about boxing, and it was about their heritage. It was about where they had come from versus where they wanted to go, and their families, and why they were doing what they were doing. There were definitely more dramatic elements of suicide and family abuse, and family drama, but it was all set in the boxing ring. And so each of these 4 actors kind of get their chance to say their story until it gets to like the final 2. And then the final 2 kind of, go head to head, and you really have to decide, the audience as well as the people in the show have to decide who is more worthy of continuing on or becoming the winner. And at the end, it was just so incredible, because I don't want to give too much away, but at the end, it just was like they went to such a far off philosophical place that it became beyond boxing. It became beyond like the element of fighting, but more about like life and like what we're doing here and why we are fighting to live and all this kind of stuff. It was just really, really beautifully written, beautifully performed. The set, though, because they had more space than the first play that I had seen at this black box theater, They were able to do more movement around, so there was a little bit more action, a little bit more like choreography with the fighting involved. But the way that they had the entire room set up, they had those 4 blocks that indicated the boxing ring, but then around the walls, even behind where the audience was sitting, were these like wooden pallets. To me, it looked like netting of a boxing ring. But then at one point, the room gets like almost completely dark, and there are like lights on those pallets that like look like stars. It looks like you're inside, you're like out in space. Incredible show. Really, 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 really powerful. I had never seen anything like it. And for it to all be done in a black box theater too was just really incredible. Really, really interesting theater going experience that I thoroughly enjoyed. And then I didn't see a lot of theater for the rest of the summer because I went on vacation, and there wasn't a lot to do as far as like theater productions. I'm on my vacation. November was the next performance that I saw, and I saw the full production of the Addams Family musical at Venice Theater. And 2 years ago, a year or two ago, Ian, the hurricane, came through and destroyed several buildings. One of them was the Venice Theater, the original Venice Theater. So they were still under renovation, so their performance was done again in more of a black box style room. It wasn't exactly a black box room, it was just really more of like a big room. They had seating on 3 sides of the stage, the area where it was being performed. And at this point I was producing the Addams Family Junior version. So I had listened to most of the music from the Addams Family at this point. So I was pretty familiar with the show. So I was getting to see kind of the full performance of the musical, which was fun. The way that they were able to produce this musical in a small space, in a non-traditional theater format, was really impressive. They had a really cool set that they did, and I did take some pictures, but they actually used like almost like it was like a book, right? So like they had the background, and they had one piece that would come out and would rotate, would flip open to the other side of a background. So they had like the outside of the mansion, and then they would flip it back to show the inside of the mansion, which is really, really, really cool. And this is like a non-traditional stage, so they had to like set up all these lights and all of this set in the room to make it fit the musical. And the piece that like came out and folded out had to be cut specifically so that it wouldn't hit any of the lights that were shining above the actors. And then behind the audience, they had these like portraits, like cutout portraits, where the ancestors would come out and sing like they were like in the portraits, which were just, it was just very cool and inventive. I think they did a really amazing job of like using the space that they had to make it interesting and make it fun. And I really impressed with what they did. And it did give me some ideas to do with my production as well. The next thing that I got to go to, which is not a theatrical performance. I did go to a reading, which I have to talk about because it was so cool and it was free. And I was like geeking out about it for an entire month. At some point in October, our local library advertised that Neil Gaiman, the author, was coming to our town, coming to Venice to do a reading, like to do like a speaking tour. And I was like shook when I saw this. I was like, oh my God, how do I get tickets? Turns out it was free. You could just show up, which was like, I don't know what they were thinking. Like, I don't know what these people were thinking when they did that, because there was like 1,000 people who showed up to this. There was a huge line to get into this performing arts hall, and they were thank goodness he didn't do any signings there. All of the books were pre-signed where you could buy them. But the line to get the pre-signed books was huge, and they were not prepared at all to take the sales that they ended up taking. I luckily had some cash on me, so I was able to get into the cash line and get some books. But it was just literally absolutely insane. And so anyway, I ended up telling a couple of my friends about it. We ended up all going, and it was so cool. It's like I've never been to, I had been to author readings where I like really enjoyed the author, but they were in like bigger cities, you know, like in London, I went to one. There was one I went to in New York. There was one I went to in Tampa. This was the first time that I had ever been to a like big author reading in a really small town. And I ended up getting 2 books. I have them. I could have gotten more, by the way. Could have definitely gotten more books. And I almost regret that I didn't get more books. But my bookshelves are happy. So I got Trigger Warning, which I have read, by Neil Gaiman. It's a collection of his short stories, and it is signed. I didn't have a copy of this. I read my copy of Trigger Warning from the library, but I was able to get a signed copy of it. And it's something that I did want to reread and have a copy of because it's Neil Gaiman and his short stories are just incredible. And then the other book that I got was Norse Mythology, which I have not read, by Neil Gaiman. Again, signed. Gotta show it off. I'm really excited to read it now. And then I definitely could have gotten copies of Sandman, which is something I really did want. They had volume 1 and volume 2 of Sandman for sale, signed, and I definitely could have gotten them. Kind of regretting it. Although I do have a huge compendium of Sandman, so it would have been like having duplicates in my library, which I only have 2 bookshelves in my house right now, and they're already double stacked. So I really can't afford to have more books on my shelves. I keep buying them though. You know, it's just kind of a problem. But anyway, it was just a really cool live reading to go to. I have to mention it. It's not really a theatrical performance, but I'm still like amazed that I got to go, and I'm still so excited that I got to have that experience in my hometown. And then the next performance that I saw, which was an actual theatrical performance in my hometown, was The Call of the Wild. And this was the first time this year that I had been to the theater at the Van Wezel in my hometown. And it's a big theater. It's a really, really big theater. I had been to other performances in this theater before. The last one I had been to was in 2022. I went to go see comedian Lewis Black there with my family. And I didn't realize how big that theater was until I went to go see The Call of the Wild. I took my students to go see The Call of the Wild as a part of their school time performances. And I also didn't realize that it was a one-man show. And it was a retelling of The Call of the Wild, which I don't think I've ever read. Oops. But if you don't know, The Call of the Wild tells the story of a dog who is kind of set out on his journey to become a working dog in the tundra, who goes from master to master to like learn how to be a sledding dog, and then ends up reconnecting with his ancestral wolf family, which was it's a really interesting story, and I'd actually like to give it a read sometime. But it was a one-man show, almost like a storytelling performance of The Call of the Wild. I'm glad I got to take my students to it, and the performance was great. The stage, it was almost, from my opinion, it almost could have been done on a smaller stage with a smaller audience, because it was just him, just one actor alone on stage with like 3 or 4 like acting blocks, and then he had like a projection screen behind him. But it wasn't even the full back of the stage that was the projection screen. It was just like these 3 panels. So like really the performance could have been done at like the Urbanite, at like a black box theater, or a much, much smaller stage. And the audience, there were so many kids there. Like I had my students, my theater classes, go with me to see this. And there were, I don't know, like I think my classes were maybe a tenth of the kids that were there, and I took about 100 kids. So there could have been like 1,000 kids there, and it was from all different schools, from all different ages, and mostly middle school. I think there was like one high school, but then there was also a special needs group that was there. So it was just like, there was just like a huge amount of kids there. And the audience was bad. The audience was really, really distracting. And it took away from the performance, and it made me sad because I really enjoyed the actor and the storytelling that he was doing on the stage. He did an amazing job of trying to capture 1,000+ kids' attention for an hour with The Call of the Wild, with just him on stage and some acting blocks and some projection screens. But it was difficult. I could tell. I think everybody could tell that it was difficult for him to do. And I'm just disappointed that the audience wasn't better behaved. That was just kind of a bummer. I thought he was really good. I thought he did a really fabulous job with his physicality, with his acting, with his storytelling abilities, and trying to be able to overcome the noise and distraction from the crowd. At one point, they came around. I was trying to take pictures of the stage before it got started, and then someone came around and told me to put away my phone, which I was like, okay, and I did. The performance hadn't started yet, okay? So like I felt completely within my right to take pictures. But then after the performance started, there were several adults who had their phones out and were texting. And again, it just added to this like huge bummer of a situation to like watch this audience just completely misbehave. I don't even know whose fault that would be. I had done a lot of work to help my students be theater ready, to have theater etiquette and have audience etiquette. And I think that they did a really great job. Most of the problems that I saw that were there were from other schools and from other groups. And the theater themselves, the Van Wezel themselves, had actually sent out a video to have teachers watch with their students before going to the performance to talk about how to have theater etiquette. But I don't know how many of them watched it. I know that there were other school time performances that happened that were like Call of the Wild was just one of the options you could choose from. And I did hear that there was another performance that was done, like it was more like a musical concert that was done that was a lot less successful with our students. So again, I don't know who to put that on. I feel really bad for the actor who had to perform through that, because that would have been really, really, really difficult for anybody to do, even a seasoned actor like the guy that we saw. After that was my production of The Addams Family, the Young at Part version. We did 2 nights, we did 2 performances. It was the first time that I've produced a musical with my school on a stage that had like a full backstage lighting crew, tech crew, sound crew. We had a lot of technical difficulties, but we got through them, and I think it ended up looking pretty great. Our students did a really fabulous job. I'm really proud of them, of their hard work, and ultimately at the end of it, I think the thing that I got the best feeling about it after it happened was seeing students that had never really had a lot of theater experience before, that were really into it and that had really bonded with the other cast members and crew members, and were able to come together and just like really have a great experience in the theater, because that's exactly what I wanted. That was like the biggest goal that I had for this particular performance. So ultimately I find it a success. The last production that I had hoped to see this year, but I ended up missing it again because life circumstances. And that was the first Broadway series that they did at the Van Wezel, which was Pretty Woman the Musical. Kind of sorry I missed it, because we did have tickets. We do have season tickets to see all of the Broadway series at the Van Wezel, but there are other musicals coming up as a part of the Broadway series that I am very, very, very excited to see. One is Hadestown in 2024. The other is Shrek the Musical. And the last, most important, that I need to see live is Hamilton at Van Wezel. So those are the 3 shows I'm looking forward to seeing in 2024. I'm really excited to be getting back into theater. I'm really enjoying my new role and getting our students interested in it. So I hope that it's effective. I hope that, I can share more of my theater experience on this channel and that our students get to have a really great experience in theater in the future. So thanks for watching. And hopefully in 2024, I'll have even more exciting theater stories to share with you. Have a fabulous day, and I will see you in class. Bye.